Another episode of Parlay Paradise, episode 3. Going to be changing that name to Biff Sportsbook. Rolls off the tongue a little bit better, and a nod back to I think everybody's first introduction to sports betting as a kid. So we're going to change that to Biff's Sportsbook. That's what you needed this past week with all the upsets that were going on. If you bet on every upset, if you somehow found a Stargate and looked through it, and you called every single bet right. If you bet one penny, you would have won over $80,000. That's how many upsets were on. So there's a lot of money to be made if you called all the upsets in a parlay right. But a lot of waves, a lot of parlay busters out there this week. Let's before we get in too far into the episode, I've got a guest star this week. My bro, C Daddy Carson Curtis, gonna use his insight, his knowledge, what he's thinking about from just watching the games, and just kind of seeing that natural gut instinct. With a little bit of my research, where we vary, where we're the same at, to give us some picks this week, and be able to compare and contrast for next week's episode a little bit. Before we get into that, let's recap on last week's games. Biggest NCAA upset calls that I called: LSU over Bama. Some other people had it. I definitely had it at the end. I hope you watched that second part. I know my phone had cut off. I told everybody these next three. I told you. I said I will be coming back next week, and I will say if you didn't bet these games, you are going to kick yourself for not listening to me. You're going to wish you would have listened. But anyways, those three games was Illinois over Michigan State. I told you, Lovie Smith. I told you that he was getting it together. You're thinking of a Michigan State team from way back yonder 2 or 3 years ago. They're not the same team. Western Kentucky over Arkansas. Arkansas's down this year. I knew Western Kentucky likes to have those wins. Any team likes to have wins over the SEC, especially a team like Arkansas. That's not a team that is, when people write off of the SEC, write them off as being a nobody in the SEC. Arkansas is down. They knew they were going to catch that win. Appalachian State over South Carolina. South Carolina beats Georgia, but they have no other big wins. They've lost some pretty big games. Appalachian State, on the other hand, has been rolling, been putting things together. They've been beating teams they should be beaten by a lot, been putting games away. Appalachian State got that win. I hope you bet on those games. All those games were at either plus 275 or over. It means you're getting over $2.75 for every dollar you bet. Most of them were plus 400s and plus 300s. So those games could have won you some money, especially if you betted them all together. NFL upset calls that we got right. We had on the hot seat, we had the Colts and the Chargers. Both the Colts lost to Miami, and the Raiders lost to the Chargers. We were set out. We called Miami having a good shot to come and upset that game. I told you how many times the Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon and the Chargers have let me down this year. The Raiders with Josh Jacobs probable to come back showed that when he did come back that they were able to compete. They've played tough. They've had tough games against people like the Texans. They've had some good hard games. They got that win. That was a nice payout for both of those games. You also had a little bit more up in the air games. Seahawks over 49ers. It was hard to bet against the 49ers last week. With them having won so many games, the Seahawks though they fly under the radar again because they have some tough losses. So they're not talked about because they have those losses on. But those are some tough losses they've lost to. They played the Ravens close. That was a good game. Seahawks got it done late in the game. I think last week I did have the 49ers underlined for you, but in a lot of my bets I had the Seahawks. Also, I had the Chargers in a couple of my bets, and so Phillip Rivers cost me a couple of huge ones. I had some other upsets picked, and I just figured that maybe the Chargers would put things away. So Thursday night cost me some money. I'll never bet on Phillip Rivers again. If you see me doing that, I'm being held hostage. Next, we have the Vikings and the Cowboys. Vikings showed that they are more consistent than a Cowboys team, in my opinion. That's why I picked them to win. The Vikings came out, showed they're more consistent than the Cowboys, win that game. Now to some of the missed calls that we got. This has been one of the weeks that I have had the most amount of missed calls, and going through those missed calls, I told you I felt pretty confident on 2 upsets. I had KSU, Kansas State over Texas. Texas wound up squeaking out that win. Baylor and TCU. TCU was putting it on these boys. Baylor comes back. It looks like it's going to be the end of the game. I'm checking it in Bryant-Denny. I'll scroll up. All of a sudden, they're tied up in the game. Then I'm scrolling while the warm-ups are going on. Goes into 1 overtime. Goes into 2 overtimes. Baylor wins it in 3 overtimes. I'm telling you, it's going to catch up to this Baylor team. These luck wins, these wins have come in and striking at the very last possible moment. It's going to catch up to them. But I did say that those underdogs are going to get those wins. In the NFL, I had the Giants over the Jets. The Jets came out. They're kind of finding their rhythm. Giants beat the Jets. Now moving into some of the more actual blown calls. Titans over the Chiefs. I had Patrick Mahomes coming in. I had the Titans losing to Matt Moore with just how many weapons the Chiefs have. Patrick Mahomes came in later after I produced the video that it was going to be official, that he was going to start for him. That was in my head. That was almost a lock game in my mind. The Titans show that it wasn't the case. Good win to the Titans. Titans finding some ways. Shout out to them for winning some good games this year, went on some bigger games. I would just wish they could stay consistent. Minnesota Golden Gophers over Penn State. Go and they at Minnesota. They big win, game of a lifetime. Won a game day there. Both teams were undefeated. Big win for the Golden Gophers. PJ Flex silencing all the doubters about whether he was deserving of that extension that he got. Golden Gophers move on to be undefeated, have some big games ahead of them, and can possibly sitting pretty good, looking at maybe a college football playoff entry. Big win on that. I thought Penn State was going to cover right at about what the spread was. I think it was at 14. That was a big blow to my parlays. The biggest blow, I almost stopped watching football for the rest of the day. Falcons over the Saints. Breeze, what's going on? Sean Payton, what's the deal? To all of the people living in Louisiana with me, what's going on? Didn't even have this game turned on. It's at the Dome. You got Drew Brees coming back. You got Alvin Kamara coming back. You've been winning games with Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. What the heck, guys? What's going on? Matty Ice has been just that, ice cold. They have zero consistency. The only shot that I thought the Falcons had in this game was it being a rivalry game, and they came out and they dominated. Not only did they win, but flipping through the channels, it almost took the breath out of me to see the 20-plus score to, 9 that the Saints had. I was like, appreciate that one. That ruined my whole Sunday. So as we recap that, those were the calls, the ones that made memory, the ones that made parlays, break calls. Now we move into Week 12 in the NFL. All right, Week 12 in college and Week 11 in the NFL. Let's get started doing things a little bit different. Camera can't quite read the whiteboard as well, so we're gonna do our little thing reading this whiteboard, and then we're going to show you the whiteboard at the end, kind of go over what the payouts are, kind of show different little things. But as we get into this, let's get into this week's bets. Starting off, we got some locks. We have Broncos at the Vikings. I got Vikings. Carson said he had Vikings when we were making this. That's a lot bet. They're playing a lot more consistent football than the Broncos. Broncos are stepping their game up a little bit silently, but they're not at the Vikings. They're not at the Vikings game level yet. Then we have Bengals at Raiders. Bengals been playing terrible all year. Just talked about the Raiders being pretty dominant, being one of the better teams that have emerged this year. Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller carrying the team. I have Raiders.
Yeah, I got the Raiders.
He's got the Raiders. Okay. Those are our 2 locks for the week. We move on to our probable bets. This is the get bets that weren't. They've been either especially with last week with that inconsistency. A lot of these bets move from locks to probable because they've shown me that they have fallacies. They've shown me that they can blow these games, or that the other team has shown me that they can play and compete with teams that are good. First up, Saints at Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks have all their talent back. Very dependent upon what Jameis Winston we see. The Saints should win this game, but the Saints should have won the Falcons game. I have the Saints winning this game, but the Saints definitely got to come out and play. Next, we got Bills at Miami. Miami, once again, picking up their game. They've blown what I thought was a tank season. Let's trade anybody that's got a higher than a 69 rating on Madden. Let's get rid of them. They've blown that tank season, I think. They've got the Bills who've been doing the opposite. Bills who started hot, cooling down, lost Devin Singletary. Frank Gore stepped up. They kept it rolling. I thought that would be where the wheels fall off if they did. And then now that Devin Singletary comes back to the team, now the team is struggling. I don't know what's going on with this Bills team. They need to figure it out. A loss to the Dolphins would be pretty catastrophic for that organization. I do have the Bills winning. Yeah. They're very capable of handling this game in the typical Bills-Dolphins game. Next, we have Cardinals at 49ers. It was a trap game earlier in the year with the 49ers coming back off a nice hot win. I don't see they're playing at San Francisco. I don't see the Cardinals coming in and beating the 49ers. What worries me why this is not a lock is because the 49ers are very heavily injury ridden right now. They've got multiple people out. They've got Kittle out. They've got Breda out. They've got just some people on defense out. They've got just a bunch of injuries. Worries me. Can they keep the performance that they were when they were undefeated? The Cardinals are definitely not the Seahawks, but can they keep that style performance? Will Jimmy G set up that? Will Jimmy G show up? In my mind, he's not as consistent of a quarterback. But also playing against Kyler Murray, who is a Matt Stafford to me, a guy that is they must have went to Baylor because they're coming at the very last minute, very last time that they can do to win the game. So I have the 49ers winning this game. Next, we got Pats at Philly. Tom Brady should handle this game. The Pats at Ravens. The Ravens were able to beat them. The Eagles are lesser than the Ravens, but they do have talent enough. Pats do need to show up. They should win the game. It's at Philly. It's another check mark in the Philly box, but the Pats should win this game. Bears at Rams. Trubisky has been null and void this year. He's not found his rhythm. He's holding the Bears team back. The defense isn't. The defense has been what's been holding any kind of thread to this team, but has had some missteps. Yes, and so they're playing at the Rams. The only thing that scares me with the Rams is that the Rams, like I was talking about with Michigan State. In my mind, when I say Los Angeles Rams, I'm thinking of a Rams team from years ago. I'm thinking of Gurley, and I'm thinking of Goff and McVay when they were hot a year or two ago. Not the Rams this year. That's not the same team, but they should still be able to beat a Bears team. It will be the Bears defense versus the Rams offense. Right. That's that game. Then we have the Chiefs and Chargers. The Chargers and Titans are neck and neck. That was stopped by a highlighter length of a fumble on a goal line. If Eckler is in that game, they win. If Gordon's in the game, they lose. Simple as that. Chiefs just lost to the Titans. Just cost me my pick'em league. Really appreciate it. I have the Chiefs winning because they should handily win this game. But they just showed me why they're not that same team from last year. I would never bet on Phillip Rivers, though. I'm definitely going Chiefs.
The Chiefs should handily take care of the Chargers.
Next, we got Cowboys and Lions. This is a game that was not on my normal betting side of Bovado, so it's not included in my payouts for later on in the episode, but I wanted to put it out here because it is a game being played, and on different sites it will be up. Cowboys at Lions. Would be a different game. Matt Stafford's in questionable mode. I believe he's questionable, not doubtful, but we showed without Matt Stafford what the Lions are capable of. They also don't have Kerryon Johnson. And so they're down some players. The Cowboys have the talent to win the game. Goff steps up. Zeke steps up. Dak steps up. This should be a win. And they should win the game. They beat the Saints. They should beat the Lions. You agree?
I don't know. I think with Stafford, the Lions have got a good shot at beating these Cowboys, but without him, I think they stand no chance. But with Stafford, they're a pretty good team. They got a pretty good offense. I think they could outscore the Cowboys.
Who do you got? Who do you got as of now?
I'd go the Cowboys. That'd be my safe bet.
Upsets alert! Upset alert is different from a hot seat. Don't be mistaken on the two. Upsets are when the upset alert is the games that I think that underdog will win, will beat the favorite. The hot seat is when if held at gunpoint, I choose the favorite, but either the favorite has shown inconsistency, or the underdog has shown something to me, but not enough to really force the bet. I usually stay away from them. Or if I include it in the bet, I bet both sides. I bet both the winners on one parlay, and then bet the same previous ones until that game, and then bet the other side. Our hot seat, our upset alerts, upset games. My one of the games I'm gonna be excited to watch this week. Divisional game between Steelers and the Browns. It's a quick turnaround for the Steelers. You have Benny Snell out. You have Ron Switzer out. You have two linebackers potentially out. But in Pittsburgh, you still have Minka Fitzpatrick leading the takeaways. He still dropped the passer rating from plus 110 area to 74. I have the Steelers beating the Browns. The Browns have not found a way to get rid of that losing mentality. Baker Mayfield's not put things together. He's shown to be just similar, a little bit worse, in fact, than Kyler Murray, in my opinion. They just haven't found their rhythm yet.
Right. I agree. I think the Steelers are going to win this one. If they can handle Baker Mayfield and put him in some pressure situations.
If they make him play quarterback.
Right.
Then we got New York Jets at Washington Redskins. I got the Jets coming out. Big injuries in this. Le'Veon Bell, marked questionable. And Case Keenum being out, but he was named this week being their number 2 back. Anyways, when he comes back, they're playing Haskins. New quarterback coming in as your starter. I don't see that panning out as a win. We also talked about the Jets have been improving their game. Yeah. They are not the same that when they first came out. They've been moving and making things shake. The Redskins aren't a dominant team yet. They're not. They're in that same early season trash bucket of the NFL. The Jets should win this game.
Right, I agree.
We have the hot seat games next. These hot seat games, the ones I'm staying away from. We've got Falcons at Panthers. Falcons at Carolina. Carolina, I thought was a different team. They've kind of started to go down. I haven't seen the same Panthers pre and post 49ers. Pre-49ers, I have them about ranking in the 49ers game. Since getting blown out, I've yet to see McCaffrey really dominate enough to where it's mattered to enough in the actual end scheme of things, in the end result. Falcons showing that if they pull things together, that the Falcons can beat good teams. That being said, that was one game against a rival. Can they go into somebody else's house and do it again? Not quite sure. I'd have to pick the Panthers in this game if forced to pick, but I'll be stay away because the Falcons could win it.
Yep, they got a good team. They're capable of beating the Panthers if they play like they played last week.
Yes, I think they play like they played last week. I take the Saints over the Panthers. So Falcons beating the Panthers. Falcons beating the Saints. I take Falcons over the Panthers. I can see the Falcons over the Panthers, but I got to take Panthers just because consistent. Yeah. Yep. Texans at Ravens. I know this is different for you, being a Ravens fan. Ravens are playing good. It's at Baltimore. Both check marks is in their box. They've already got their loss out of the way, but I still think they're hot. I don't think that loss really affected them as far as needing to refocus. Texans getting hot. Not the same Texans team as before. Texans were one of the teams in the preseason that I called having a good betting odd on them, and the Texans were one of the teams that I said that this Texas team could be in the making for winning the Super Bowl. I don't think that's the same case now after coming into the regular season, but they're being more of the team that I thought they were going to be. When they lost Clowney, their defense was weaker. Deshaun Watson wasn't as fluid as I thought he was going to be. But now they're kind of starting to show that glimmer. With that being said, the Texans haven't shown enough for me to overtake the Ravens. But this is another tough game. When you come into the New England, the Ravens know New England's going to be tough. This is an equally tough game. This is the Ravens should be up by a score, but are the Ravens coming in with that this is going to be a tough game? Because if they're not, the Texans win this game.
I think we're gonna handle up on the Texans super easily. I think we're so hot right now. It's going to be hard for them to stop us. I mean, we just beat the Seahawks a couple weeks ago, beat the Patriots, blew out Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not very good, but we still took care of business. I think we're just firing on all cylinders a little too well for them to stop us or even come close. I mean, Marlon Humphrey's been locking people down. He's going to lock down Hopkins. He's too physical for him. And then we just got to take care of Deshaun Watson. That's all it is.
I have to pick the Ravens if you ask me.
Oh, I'm easily picking the Ravens. It's no question.
But it's not easy.
It's no question.
It's not easy. If I'm in the locker room and the Ravens are focused, it's easy.
The Ravens,
Error.
We're all about energy.
Easy.
We're all about energy.
Easy.
We got it. We're rolling right now.
When they falter this week, do not blame me for causing your cost.
We're hot. Remember that playoff run? We got the Super Bowl. We got hot, and right now we're hot.
Alrighty. Moving on to the NCAA. Don't have as many NCAA bets called for you as I did last week. There's a bunch of teams playing high school teams. Ohio playing Rutgers. Alabama playing Mississippi State. There's just a bunch of teams that are not playing anybody. That is going to make a good game. Make it Florida, Missouri. Nothing that you would. That's going to increase your odds better. Either the odds are just way too crazy to bet on them. It's not going to make your parlay any better, or it's a game that I would say was you're not good odds and a better team like Florida, Missouri. They're better odds than Alabama and Mississippi State, but I mean they're not good enough to bet that. They're still not good odds. Anyways, moving on, we have LSU at Ole Miss. We have our first three locks of the week. LSU at Ole Miss. LSU's going to beat Ole Miss. Do not get hung up on the fact that Ole Miss was good a couple of years ago. This is another team. Do not get lovey-dovey with the teams of old. Ole Miss has 0 commanding wins. Ole Miss has 0 impressive wins. They have nothing to show for themselves this year. LSU is going to win this game. It is going to happen. LSU's offense, firing on all cylinders. They're going to heavily outscore Ole Miss. Where this gets interesting is the point spread being 21 points. There's some room there to make an interesting bet of maybe giving Ole Miss some points and having them get inside that spread if LSU comes out and too high off the Bama win, and that's the biggest trap to me is that Ole Miss could get inside a 21-point spread. Ole Miss isn't winning this game, so that's the trap part of the trap game of LSU Ole Miss. But don't be too quick to go run into that. LSU Bama, you saw how close that game was. You saw how we still outscored Alabama. Bama outscored that 21-point spread by another 7 points, by 28 points. LSU's going to cover that spread, I think, as well. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
Next, we have Wake Forest at Clemson. Clemson's going to win this game. Can we get that?
Yep.
All right. Where the interesting part is, also, for those of you who don't know Wake Forest or don't keep up with them, which I'm sure is a lot of you, Wake Forest has been ranked in the top 20, in the bottom 20s, like the 22s, the 20s, 19s, earlier in the season. They just lost their ranking, losing this past week, but they just lost their ranking this past week. The spread is 35 points. Clemson has shown to have been having trouble this year with teams that they should put away, but have the capability to put up some numbers on them. UNC gave them a good game. They should have beat UNC. UNC is not just they're not just they're not. I struggle to find. They're not a Kentucky. They're not somebody that ULL or somebody that you're playing that you don't normally play that you're just going to swack. Wake Forest has a team, has a top 25-ish team. They can get inside of a 35-point spread if Clemson doesn't come out ready to play. That's where that's interesting. Indiana at Penn State. It's at Penn State. Penn State just came off of a hard loss. Penn State is going to win this game. Indiana has no command of wins, but I think it's a decent spread. A decent payout for them. For Indiana, if you want, for Penn State, if you wanted to put that as a lock in your parlay. These next four, I think, is where we differ. We're going to start out with another SEC game. We got Georgia and Auburn. Georgia is the favorite. Auburn is the underdog. It's a 3-point spread. Negative 140 for Georgia, plus 120 for Auburn. I'm going with Auburn.
I got Georgia in this one pretty easily, I think.
I think to your credit, Georgia is playing better ball than they started out.
Yeah.
Georgia lost South Carolina. South Carolina just lost Appalachian State. Auburn's better than both of those teams, I think.
You can't compare like that, though. I just don't agree because Georgia's better than Florida, and Florida beat Auburn. So, I mean, it's just not very valid.
I think Auburn's got a good shot to win this. I think that would be a claim to Auburn's season this year of knocking Georgia out of this. That's the same side of the SEC that they're in, same side of the conference. It's a big conference game, and so you can kind of offset some of those losses that you've taken. With a Georgia win right here, I think Auburn can do it. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be one of the closer games in the NCAA. It's a game I probably would stay away from, to be honest. But more likely, probably going to bet both sides of it.
I don't know. I can't rely on Bo Nix enough to have faith in Auburn. I think he struggles in the big games.
True, he has shown that.
So that's why I'm going Georgia. I think they're a more experienced team in situations like this. So I got them. I think they're going to beat them pretty easily.
Next, we have Texas at Iowa State. Iowa State is the favorite. Iowa State is a 7-point favorite. Texas has plus 205 to win this game. Iowa State is negative 260 to win this game. Iowa State has played a ton better teams. They've had very close losses. They've had a loss in the last minute to a field goal by Baylor. They beat TCU. They've had some Oklahoma State loss maybe. Very close games that they've lost to some very quality teams. They're playing the number 19 ranked Texas. Texas has been back and forth out of the edge of the top 25. So is Iowa State. Iowa State. They're sitting in that same box. Iowa State has played better teams though. Texas has not, and Texas has the same way you talk about Bo Nix not performing in big games. Texas hasn't performed in big games this year, and I would hope it was opposite because I was hoping that Texas would be the one in the Big 12, not Oklahoma. That was everybody was talking about. I got Iowa State in this.
I got Texas. I feel like at the end of the year, Texas always starts playing good. I feel like they're doing that right now. They're about to start coming back. I think they're going to beat Iowa State. They got a good team. They played LSU well. I think they're going to come out and beat these guys. So
good things, but I think I was going to get it.
I don't know.
Moving on to Iowa, we had Minnesota State at Iowa. Iowa is the favorite. Iowa, it's a 3-point spread game. And let's see, it is plus 125 for Minnesota, who's number 8, over the number 20 Iowa, who is a negative 145 in this. I think this is where Vegas gets them wrong, man. They get them wrong. They got Penn State, Minnesota State wrong. They got the Golden Gophers wrong. They're not giving anybody love to them because it's not the typical SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC people. They're going to win this game. I was played nobody. I have no clue why they're number 20. I have none. We're looking at their schedule. They've played nobody. They've got no good wins. Minnesota State just beat Penn State, who was number 4. They're going to beat Iowa. They're going to beat Iowa. This is 2 games of them whereas most of us say you got a trap game, you just won Penn State. No, you don't have a trap game because winning Penn State means now if we win these next 2 games, we have a shot to be in the college football playoffs. In my head, they should be number 5. In my head, they should be above Bama now. They're undefeated. Bama's lost into that Big Ten. They're in the Big Ten, that West Division. But that is a little bit softer than that Big Ten, than the Big Ten East. But like what we were saying, Minnesota, this now allows them for these games to mean more. If they go undefeated in the Big Ten, and whether they win or lose that Big Ten championship game, they win, they're in the playoffs. If they lose, you've got one loss. You're undefeated in the Big Ten besides a loss to the number 2 seed Ohio State. So you either got to say the Big Ten isn't a tough conference, which takes away from Ohio State, or you got to give them credit. And I think at this point, I got to give them credit. Shout out to Barstool Bets, Barstool Pick'em with Dave Portnoy, the El Presidente, saying it. Every few years in that Big Ten West, you get a soft side of that division, where Wisconsin did it a few years ago. Ohio State has done it a couple of years and by playing some of those West teams where they've just gone through and been able to not really have played anybody, but get credit to get that notoriety from the typical teams of how they are. I think I was getting that notoriety from years past, not from what they've done this year. I've got Minnesota.
I've got Iowa on this one. I think Minnesota State is not all they're cracked up to be. I think, honestly, they should have lost last week to Penn State if Penn State's quarterback didn't choke so bad in the final minutes of the game. I mean, they were in the red zone 3 times. All I needed was 2 scores. The red zone 3 times, couldn't make anything happen. I think my man threw 3 picks as well that game. So I don't think Minnesota State should have won last week. I don't think they're going to win this week. I think it's time for them to be exposed, and Iowa's going to be the team to do that.
I'll bet you this. They'd beat Iowa and Wisconsin next week.
Definitely. I'm glad you said that, because they're definitely not beating Wisconsin. If somehow they squeak by Iowa, they will not beat Wisconsin. I'll bet you on that. Wisconsin's going to run all over them. It's going to be no contest. They're going to get exposed.
Next, we got Oklahoma at Baylor. This is a hot seat game for me in the NCAA. Oklahoma is not the number 4 team that everybody had them predicted to be at the beginning. They've had 0 wins once again. Another team with no wins, no good wins. They beat Texas. Texas hasn't beat anybody.
Texas almost beat LSU. That means Oklahoma's almost.
They didn't almost beat us. That game was out of hand the whole game. That was never in question.
It was back and forth.
There was never a question if LSU was going to lose that game. LSU beat Texas. Oklahoma beat Texas. Texas is irrelevant. That's why they're going to lose.
But if they both beat them, they're the same.
Oklahoma lost to Kansas State.
They did.
That's a tough loss.
They played a bad game.
That's tough,
and
bro.
I can't wait.
They played nobody else. You have no good wins, and you have 1 tough loss. That's tough, bro.
I can't wait for them to beat Baylor, because Baylor ain't played nobody either. They've been almost losing to everybody.
Is 8-0,
and they're not any good. It's a shame. They're 9-0. They're not any good.
Baylor also, though. Now, don't get me hyping them up, because they've played 3 close games where they've came in the very last minute, and I don't like teams that do that. Wait to the very last second, tied up. They kicked a field goal against Iowa State to win it. They tied it up again. I want to say on a field goal 2 weeks after that to go into overtime, win it in overtime. And then checking the game with Bryant-Denny, I'm checking it. TCU's beating them. Check it again with a couple seconds left. Baylor ties it up, goes into overtime, goes into 2 overtimes. They've been in 3 overtimes. That luck is going to run out. But I hope and I think with that plus 310 line on Baylor that they beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not a dominant team.
There's no way. There's no way Jalen Hurts allows Baylor to come back. Well, they're so offense heavy. They're not going to allow Baylor. Baylor's not going to keep up.
Baylor's got a good defense.
They're not going to keep up with Oklahoma. I'm just letting you know.
They're going to. I'm going to let you know.
I'm going to let you know.
All right. we've kind of broken it down. I'm going to flip the board, let you see a little see the breakdown, and then kind of go over everything before we wrap up. Let's see if we can get all that on the screen. All right. As we go through, we got our locks up here. Vikings beating Broncos. Raiders beating Bengals. We got our probable games listed here. Like I said, the Cowboys and Lions game wasn't on Bovada. These are my Bovada numbers. That's who I use. With these games going through and on your probable games winning, that remember that plus the plus and the green number means it, off a $100 bet, this is what you would net. So off a $100 bet with all these with these let's see, 8 games winning, 8-game parlay, it is $845 you net on a $100 bet. If you go over and you give yourself the upsets too, and you got the Steelers and the Jets, you're feeling confident on that 10-team parlay, that's $39.60 that you're netting. That's a good bet in my opinion to make. Then your hot seat games, I usually stay away from them, but sometimes I use them as my reach games. But if I go for the reach, I'm going to go for if I'm going for the reach, I usually cover it betting the other side. So if you go through all of the underlines, all the teams that we had picked, we were kind of me and Carson kind of agreed in what we had said. Is if you go with those underlines, you net 83.41. If you flip the hot seats to where you think it's all the underlines and you got the Falcons and the Texans, you net 33,958. That is a good reach bet, but I would definitely hedge that bet. That is some tough games in there. People got to play good, and the Falcons and Texans got to show up to win those 2 games for that to happen. Moving over here, these 3 blues, we got our locks. These are our locks that I would bet to kind of make an additional team in your parlay. So when you have a parlay bet, those odds get multiplied. So the more teams you have, the better odds you're going to get on that end result. So having a few locks mixed in there just helps boost your odds, your payout. We got the Georgia and Minnesota games that I think the upset's going to win. But I do have Georgia underline, who is the favorite. Because this is who I would have to pick if I had to pick who's going to win the game is the underline. I think Auburn and Minnesota State are going to win those orange slots. Iowa State should win that brown. That's a probable. And the red, Oklahoma, Baylor, I'm staying away from it. Breaking down the numbers at the bottom. If you go with, if you go with all of the underlines, you have Georgia winning this game, and you have Minnesota State winning the Iowa game, and Oklahoma winning theirs. It's we may not have even put Oklahoma in it. Is 7-19 for that 100, with Auburn winning. So Auburn winning this game and Minnesota State winning this game. So what I call, we got plus 915. With if you flip it to what Carson was talking about with Texas winning this game, but Georgia and Iowa winning these orange, then that goes to $12.99. And then if you call all the upsets, if Baylor upsets Oklahoma, if Minnesota upsets Iowa, if Texas upsets Iowa State, and Auburn upsets Georgia, and these 3 locks, you got plus 7,150. So those are good. Those are your breakdowns of that. Mix and match how you wish. Hopefully, this is giving you a nice breakdown on. This week's bets, both on the NFL, NCAA. Thank you for coming and tuning in for another week with us. Please subscribe and hit the little notification bell on YouTube. That way you can be notified every week when the video comes out. They've been ranging from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday coming out. So to avoid having to go check, just click that little bell. It'll notify you when the video gets posted. That way you can take care of your bets, lock them in, and make some money out there. I appreciate Carson for coming out this week. Excited to see how these bets pay off. If these videos have been running a little long for you, to where I know I try to give you some insight into why I'm saying what I'm saying. If they're running a little long for you, then be sure to go ahead and follow my new Twitter. The username is @Gunner_Curtis, but the actual screen name that shows up is 62's Bailout for Degenerates. 62's a little nickname that I got from back in high school being my number. This is definitely bailout bets for us degenerates. With that, have a good week and good luck to you.